Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online build video with me, Sherman. Today, I bring you guys something new, something different, and something that's really a lot of fun, so hope you guys like it. This is the Spellsword. This is a solo build for PvE with some alterations. Yes, it will work in PvP just as well, so it's pretty scary for the type of build it is. But let's go ahead and get in and take a look at this build. I'm starting here. We are a high elf stamina sorcerer. You guys heard that correctly, a high elf. There's a reason I chose high elf, and you guys will find out in a little bit. We do have kind of some mixed stats here. We have 34 into health, 30 into stamina. This gives us a 22k max health, 28k max stam, with a 3k weapon damage with a 37% weapon crit. Now I know that crit seems kind of low, but when you buff up with everything, you end up with a 47% crit and roughly around a 4k weapon damage, so it's kind of nice. Going on down here, we are running the Lady Mundastone for the extra spell resist and physical resist. It's kind of what I do with my solo builds. I really want them to be really durable, so I kind of boost up as much of their resistances as possible. And just to show you guys what this build looks like when it's fully buffed, we have 3408 here weapon with a 37% weapon critical. We do have a 21k spell and physical resist. Really good on those resistances there because we are using a damage shield. Moving on down here, we do have Dubious Cameron Throne as our food. This is giving us some stamina recovery. It's giving us some extra stamina and extra health. As you can see, we do have a 1443 stam recovery, but look what it looks like when we pop our potion here. We actually go to 1635 with the 47% weapon crit, 34 weapon damage still. And then when you add in the weapon damage enchant we have on the back bar, we actually go to almost 4k, but we actually go higher than 4,000. And we'll get to that when we get into the gear sets. So really good overall with this. We do get major brutality, major savagery with this. And we get the major endurance, which is stam recovery, which is what we need for this build to be really, really viable. Now, the problem with that is you don't have a lot of healing except for one heal. So you gotta be a little careful with this build. It is a little bit more advanced than some of my other ones. Moving on to the gear sets now. We are running Stormfist. That is going to be the best thing for this, and this is one of the reasons why I chose the High Elf. The High Elf gives us 4% more shock damage, so that does apply to this monster set. So that's really good that we get that extra 4%, because technically we're at a 14% with our CP being a Sorc, and this we go to 14% shock damage, and that's why we get that 2227 shock damage on the initial hit of Stormfist. Then, as you can see, we do 10,880 physical damage when the fist closes. So, really good there. The next that we're using is something kind of out of the norm, but after testing it with it and messing around with it for a while, I find this to be really good for solo play. It also works really good for any kind of DPS type build, but that's Stormmaster. Stormmaster is a really powerful set. It doesn't look like it, but the 2-piece and 3-piece are critical, weapon crit, and then the 4-piece is weapon damage. The 5-piece, when you deal critical damage with a fully charged heavy attack, your light attacks deal an additional 1,799 shock damage for 20 seconds. Every time you throw a heavy attack, you're going to pretty much crit. That's going to give you this benefit all the time. So you're going to pretty much have this Stormmaster set procced all the time. Just to show you guys, I did a test on a Skelly, so you guys can see here, Stormmaster was up 78% of the time, and it allowed me to get not that many hits. It actually allowed me 101 hits, and as you can see, they were doing 1,315 or 1,230 extra damage on top of that. But look over here real quick so you guys can see this. I do have a 2067 spell pin, which we'll get to when I finish showing this off. So Stormmaster's really good set for this build because it gives you that extra damage that you need for when you're solo playing. because you don't have a lot of ways of getting extra damage, and you want as much extra damage as you can possibly get to kill things faster, and this allows that. The next set we're running is Strength of the Automaton. Really, really good on Sorks. Sorks just are superb with this set. And if you look, it gives us extra weapon crit, extra max stam, extra damage, weapon damage, and then on top of that adds 400 weapon damage to your physical damage abilities. Well, guess what? We have one ability that's not physical damage. Everything else we use is physical damage. Our 2 sets do shock damage. So it's one of the reasons why we do run a shock enchant here, is because it actually does more damage than a poison enchant. So really good. Next up, we are using a bow on the back bar. So let me go over the traits, the enchants, and the way it's set up so you guys can see. We have an infused helm on the monster set, heavy, light shoulders, Nirnhoned. The gloves are Nirnhoned. The leggings are infused with tri-stats. All the big pieces here, the helm, the chest, and the legs all have tri-stats, but the chest we want reinforced. You can go infused if you want to go for more of a DPS type feel, but I do think Nirnhoned works out really good here, or reinforced works out really good here, or you can go Nirnhoned. On the other 2 smaller pieces, we are Nirnhoned with max stam. All the small pieces, max stam, big pieces, tri-stats. On the jewelry, we've got 3 robust with all weapon damage. We don't need infused with this or any stam recovery because we have enough already. But this right here gives us a really good balance of that weapon damage and extra stamina that we need. So moving on to the weapons, we are running an infused 2-handed with the shock enchant, an infused bow with a weapon damage. And overall, this really works out. We are using the power pots. These give us stamina, stam recovery, major brutality, weapon, major savagery. So we get the extra weapon crit and the weapon damage. But we are using rally as our heal. So we'll get to that. And then, like I said, Dubious Cameron Throne is our food. This is like by far the best food you can use when solo playing. And as you can see, we do have a 22k health. But when we use our shield, we actually get us almost 8k shield, which is perfect. And then when you add Brawler to it, we go up to 10k. Now, that right there is really, really important that you keep these 2 shields up when you're soloing, because this way you get damage mitigation galore. Alright, now that we've done that, let's go over the skills. Starting with class skills, make sure, just go ahead and do it. Just get all of them, because you never know what you might use and what you might not use from a class. So always get your class passives, all of them, really important. On to the weapons, 2-handed, all the passives, bow, all the passives. Now you can go dual wield with this build, it does work, but if you go dual wield, I suggest using twin slashes, deadly or blade cloak, and hidden blade. When you use this, use the blood craze so you get that tick heal. You won't heal for as much, so you do have to take off the back bar trap, rearming trap, and you have to put critical surge because you do need another heal when soloing with a dual wield. But dual wield is possible. On the bow, make sure you get all the passives. On armor, light armor, you want the top 3, and it's very important you get the top one at least because of the reduced sprint and the reduced effectiveness of snares and stuff. It's a very small thing, but it works out. Then all the medium passives, we are a medium build, so you want all the medium. And on the armor, by the way, you are running 5 medium here, a light and a heavy, so you really want to make sure you have that. Moving on to heavy armor, just need the top 3 passives, and then world skills, soul magic, you want these 2. Guilds, Fighters Guild, you want all the passives, guys. It's really important. You really need to get that Slayer passive on that front bar, and then when you're on the back bar, you get another 3% with this. And if you look at when we weapon swap between the 2, our weapon damage doesn't change by much between the 2, which is really important. You want to keep your weapon damage with this build very close to each other. So that's why we run Dawnbreaker on the back bar. Mage's Guild, you just need Persuasive Will, and then Daunted, you want Undaunted Command and Undaunted Metal. Also, for Bone Shield, make sure you get Spike Bone Shield, and I'll go over that when we get there. Race. So we are a High Elf. Now, High Elves do get 9% magic recovery. They do get the 10% max magicka, but this is the one we're really looking for on this, and that's at 4% extra shock damage. This really helps. Now, a Wood Elf is really good for this as well, because it gives you a lot more recovery and stamina, and it gives you poison resist and immunity to poison effects and disease effects, so either one would be really good for this. Dark Elf's not too bad. Orc is really good, but you won't get that 4% extra shock damage that the High Elf gives you. Alchemy, medicinal use, and on provisioning, Gourmand and Connoisseur. Now let's go over the skills. Starting with our first skill here, we do have Wrecking Blow. This is basically going to be like our Execute. Because we don't have, we're not using Executioner Strike, we're going to be using this. And this thing can hit upwards to 20k. So really powerful on those hits. Next up, we do have Brawler. This is here for the damage that it does up front, the damage it does over time. And then on top of that, it does grant us a damage shield for 2,474 for 8 seconds, and each enemy hit increases the damage shield by 100%. Strength of the automaton does apply to the shield also. So the 400 weapon damage does apply to the shield because it considers that the damage, when you do damage, it does that, but it also applies that 400 weapon damage to the strength of the shield. You have an insane shield with this, by the way, just from Brawler. Next up, we have Spike Bone Shield. The reason we have this is, one, it absorbs gives us a shield that absorbs 34% of our max health, but it returns 41% of the direct damage absorbed back to the enemy. 41%, guys. Not 30-something, 41. And that's because Sorcs get 5% spell damage and 5% physical damage. That 5% physical damage applies to this towards direct damage. Next up, we have Rally here. This is our main heal. As you can see, it gives us major brutality, but it heals us for 971 every 2 seconds while active, and an additional 1504 health when Rally expires. The final heal is increased by up to 564% in proportion to the length of the time Rally has been active. This is our primary heal, guys. You want to keep this going all the time. Next ability we have on our bar is Bound Armaments. We have this: while slotted, your max stamina is increased by 8%, and your light attack damage is increased by 11%. So this really applies to that, to your light attack damage. We get 10% from CP, but now we have 21% because of this. So total 21% light attack damage increase. Really, really good. Moving on to the last skill here, we have Flawless Dawnbreaker. As you can see, 11,649 physical damage to enemies in front of you, and an additional 13,000 over 5 seconds. But while slotted, you also get 5% more weapon damage, and because of the Fighters Guild, we get 3% more weapon damage from Slayer. So 8% more weapon damage. And I do want to show you guys what it looks like when you're buffed up with the damage on the skills here. So Wrecking Blow, 14k. This does 5k up front, 8k over time. And Dawnbreaker does 12k up front, 14k over 5 seconds. And that's not including the 400 weapon damage from automatons and the enchant off our back bar. Moving on to the back bar, though, we do have Rearming Trap. This does really good damage up front, damage over time, and then it grants us minor force, increasing our critical damage, which really plays out really well. Next, we have Venom Arrow. We have this for the poison damage and the damage over time, but it's mainly for if an enemy is casting an ability, they are interrupted, set off balance, and stunned for 3 seconds when you use this on them. It's really good for just interrupting people and enemies, mostly. Next up, Endless Hail. As you can see, this does damage over time. It does 1,310 damage to enemies in the target area for 0.5 seconds for 10 seconds. So it hits for like 20 times. It's ridiculous. But it's got a 5-meter radius. It's a really good AoE, so good to keep active. The next one we have is Hurricane. As you can see, this thing buffs you doing damage to nearby enemies by 875 every 1 second for 15 seconds. But the wind around you grows in diameter, and the damage increases by up to 150% damage and 9 meters in size. So it starts at 5 and grows out to 9, but it does 150% more damage when it's at the 9 meters. It also grants you major reward and major resolve, increasing spell and physical resist by 5,280, and it increases your movement speed by 10%. This is why Orc is really good for this, but I just like the High Elf. It works out really well. And then, of course, we do have Bound Armaments here for the max stam and the damage to the light attacks. Also, if you want, you can also pop this ability. If you're going to block an attack and you know you're going to take the hit, use this because it will give you 30% block mitigation, even with a bow and a two-handed. So, next up, we have Flawless Dawnbreaker again for that weapon damage. We want that high weapon damage on the back bar. It increases our light attacks with our bow. It increases the damage of our abilities on the back bar while we're back here. So really good. And that is the skills. Now let's jump into CP. Starting with the red tree, we have 66 in the Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 22%. We have 2 in the medium armor focus, giving us a little bit more physical resist. Sorry, I did some adjustments. We have 31 into thick skin, reducing damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. 56 into hardy, reducing physical poison disease damage by 12%, and that reduces damage over time. Yeah. Then we have 56 in elemental defender, reducing flame frost, shock, and magic damage by 12%. So we get a lot of mitigation through resistances and our damage reduction, but we also get all that stuff applied to our damage shield as well. So moving on, we have 40 into Bastion, increasing the effectiveness of our damage shields by 16%. 19 into quick recovery, increasing our healing received by 5%. I know it's not a lot, guys, but it really helps out in the long run. We have 56 into Warlord, reducing break free cost by 20%, 23 into Sprinter, reducing sprint cost by 14%, and 23 into Bashing Focus. We do bash, so getting these reduced costs is really important. Moving on over here, we have 43 into Mooncalf. This increases stamina recovery by 10%, 43 into Tenacity, increasing magicka and stamina of your fully charged heavy attacks by 10%, mainly stamina. And then moving on over here, we have 56 into Tumbling, reducing our dodge roll by 20%. And then 26 into Shadow Ward, reducing our block costs by 11%. Moving on to the final tree, blue. We have 43 into Bless. This increases healing done by 10%. We have 19 in Elemental Expert. This gives us a 5% increase in shock damage, which being a Sorc, we get another 5%. That's 10. Then you add the 4% for being an High Elf. That's a 14% increase in shock damage, and that's how we get those sets to do more damage. We also put 22 into Spell Erosion, just to give us an extra spell pin to make those things hit harder. And when you're running with a group and you have somebody who can apply Major Breach and Major Fracture, or either or, that's going to give you a lot more spell pin on there to do more damage. So with those item sets. Now, moving on over here, we have 16 in a Physical Weapon Expert. This increases our light and heavy attacks with our two-handed and our bow by 10%. So with that extra 11% on light attacks, we get a 21% increase on our light attack damage. Really good here. 40 into Mastered Arms, increasing direct damage done by 16%. And then moving on over here, we have 40 into Thaumaturge. This increases your damage done with the damage over time effects by 16%. We have 40 into Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities. Rally is a stamina heal. So if we crit heal with that, we get 16% more critical healing, which is good. Also, that 43 over here gives us 10% more healing done. So overall, really good. We have 7 into Piercing to increase our physical pin. We don't have a lot of physical pin with this build, but this allows for more. So, and then we have 43 into Mighty, increasing your physical, poison, disease damage done with 10%. Now, people are going to say, why did you put into these two? Because I tried it without, and without I don't get as much, even with putting points like pumping this up to 66, this up to 66, this up to 56, and then taking the remainder points and kind of spreading them out there and here. I don't get enough damage output, guys. to compensate. Even if I take the 43 out of this and do, like I said, dump this to 66, 66, 56, I think 25, 56, and then the rest into here, I still don't get enough damage output. But it works out. So going back to this, just to show you guys, this was on a 6 million skeleton, so 15k DPS. Not great, not gonna lie, but I do want you to see this. So my Wrecking Blow hit for 20k, almost exactly, guys. My heavy attacks were hitting for 10k. My Implosion was going off. When it did 18k damage, and then Flawless Dawnbreaker was hitting for 18k up front, or 6k up front, 18k over time. Just really, really powerful stuff here. And then Implosion down here was hitting for 17k because I get both. Yeah, but I mean, overall, it's a pretty good build. But let me go ahead and show you guys the survivability of the build. You do want to keep your pot up. Like I said, the shield on this is crazy. And anytime you can heavy attack, do it, because then anytime you light attack, within 20 seconds, you get that extra. See, like if I do this, I just sit here and light attack, I'm hitting them all with that shock damage. Usually it'll proc them all, but for some reason it doesn't always. There we go, 23k shield there. It's all about, that's the one thing you gotta understand. When you solo play, it's all about surviving. And like I said, the amount of recovery this build has is perfect. And I really wanted to see what I could pull off with with this build, because it's a Sorc, and Sorcs are really powerful. Just a lot of people don't realize how powerful a Sorc really can be. So this really shows, like, Sorcs are really OP when it comes to stamina. And yeah, I just died. But I died on purpose, so I wasn't gonna do this for the whole time. But you guys got to see the build. It's got really good survivability as long as you pay attention and you're not goofing off and talking. Yeah, but that's pretty much the build. I mean, it works out really well. If you are a high elf or a wood elf or an orc or something, you can get more into your health, like 24k, and then put the rest into stamina. You want around 22 to 24k health to be really viable, and you want at least 26 above, 27 I would say, 27k stam and above to be really good. Even a Khajiit could pull off this build and be really good at it, because the Khajiit gets that extra 8% crit that can play into the build really well. But that's pretty much it for the Spellsword, guys. That is a kind of a hybrid in a sense, because you're using both magicka, stam, base stuff, mainly the shock stuff, and then boosting everything else with physical damage. So it works out really well. It's a really fun build. It's really an interesting build, but it works, and it's pretty cool. And yes, if you guys are wondering, yes, I have tested this with Pierce, like as a pure DPS build, and was still able to pull off like 21k DPS with my rotation or my skill. But if I had more penetration on the boss or on the thing, I could have probably gotten closer to 32 with it. So it works out, even as a stam DPS build. But that's pretty much it for the build, guys. I hope you guys like it. If you do, go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more builds by me, you can hit that subscribe button. Other than that, thank you for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day, and this guy might see you in game. Bye.